What is up, good people? Jungle Link here. Hope you're doing well. Pretty lazy weekend as everyone's getting ready for the Super Bowl, but we do have some really interesting stories to talk about here. First and foremost, we have the Treasury Secretary teaming up with the Senator to take shots at Coinbase. The Clarity Act, it has to get done. They are putting maximum pressure on them. We have some developments, some news that came out about Epstein, the Treasury, and crypto policy. Really interesting thread there and quite a bit of stuff. Let's just start out here. This first story, we see what Treasury Secretary Bessent says. We cannot proceed forward without clarity. We're going to hear from Scaramucci later in this video where he is echoing that same sentiment, how important it really is. And he tells market participants that want to get in the way of the Clarity Act to go ahead and move to El Salvador. Just you know who he's sending a message to with that comment here. And then you have Senator Mark Warner, who says, I feel like I'm stuck in crypto hell. Essentially saying it's important and he wants to get this done, but it's just nonstop. He's ready to wrap this up and move on. And Scott Bessent says, you know what? We have these nihilist groups within the crypto industry, and we know, again, who he's talking about, Brian Armstrong and Coinbase specifically, that prefer zero regulations over the new structure bill. They have to get this done. It is so important to finally put that to rest. Again, we'll hear from Scaramucci here. Epstein Bitcoin Task Force. Get this. What the heck is that? And the Treasury. Jeffrey Epstein claiming he spent some time at the Treasury, and I don't doubt it, and we'll talk about why, with the Bitcoin Task Force. And you know what they're doing. How to crush their competition, how to push forward adoption. And when we look here, it's not all talk. We see he's funding through MIT, using gifts to underwrite their initiatives, what they want done here. They ain't doing this for free, right? You wonder, well, why doesn't Bitcoin have certain features? Why isn't it maybe faster, cheaper, whatever? Well, some of that could be just the thought leaders have been bought off by the government. He's a conduit for the government to put forward certain ideas, certain functionalities. Very well could be. While the Bitcoin Foundation collapsed in 2014, Epstein's money helped pay the salaries of major core developers, 3 of the 5, effectively moving the brain of Bitcoin into a lab that he had at least some sort of influence over. Also at the Treasury, Epstein's emails to Andrew Farkas mention high-level access. Well, this aligns with what we know. Former Treasury Larry Summers, at that time, is the executor of Epstein's will. So you know these guys are tight. That's his executor of his will, and he was at this time the Treasury Secretary. So you know that this email has actually probably happened, most likely. And so what I would ask you is this, because we hear about grand conspiracies, things like this. If Epstein could influence crypto policy directly with the Treasury, you don't think that him, his group, or similar people could do the same with the SEC? Because we hear all the time, oh, that could never happen. It's not possible. No one has that kind of power. Here we are seeing direct evidence that this person is really projecting a certain crypto asset policy and using the Treasury as his puppet. You know that the SEC would be easier to corrupt. You've seen the creatures that go through there, from Gensler to Clayton to Hinman. Like, come on, they're ready to do dastardly deeds. You know that. So I think this really shows we got to question everything that kind of played out in the government and also media, their attitude towards the crypto space, and that, Bitcoin's the only one, all this kind of stuff. That's not by accident. That didn't emerge out of nowhere. And we're seeing at least part of that machine that pushed that narrative forward. And again, we've seen in these drafts, their idea was to suppress competition here. When asked if the U.S. government would now be pursuing adoption or trying to kill out Bitcoin, Epstein says push is the wrong word. Inevitable. Frightening, looking for answers. Frightened, looking for answers. This is happening, of course, full speed ahead, and he's trying to steer the way this is going to work. Didn't play out exactly probably like they liked. There's a lot of major companies, a lot of technologies, a lot of big blockchains, but make no mistake, this slowed us down in a big way. Now, I saw a lot of these things going on around X about people being paid to talk bad about Ripple and XRP. $25,000. I thought, oh, it's nonsense, until I got the same offer here today at 3:07 p.m. I'll tell you what this likely is, because ain't no one going to pay me, and I saw even smaller accounts being offered this. Ain't no one paying us $25,000 to say something bad about XRP or Ripple. I would just do it, get my 25 grand, and buy myself some more XRP and then tell everyone what happened. What this likely is, I expect, is they're going to people like honeypotting them, essentially. Like, how many influencers, how many main XRP accounts can you say, yeah, I'm down to do that? Here's my wallet. Now they got, a screenshot of what you said. They have your wallet. And I think then they're going to roll out. If people are taking them up on this deal, they're going to start rolling out a list of all the people that came on board. And for 25,000, they were willing to put out propaganda. Ain't nobody, I'm telling you this, ain't no one going to pay people 25,000 to do this kind of thing. You have scams. You have all sorts of accounts that do this all day for free here. Now, Ethereum Layer 2 is essentially dead in the framework of we thought of them in the past. Vitalik confirmed what we've known for some time. The dream of Ethereum is this kind of single network comprising of the main chain and the side chains all working in unison and basically being one big network. That's done. They're going to have to move on. They have to do a lot of redesign here. Doesn't mean that an L2 can't be a great network, but it's essentially, when you look at Arbitrum, when you look at Optimism, they're pretty much Solana with maybe a little more interoperability, but they really are truly their own chain. They will never be part of Ethereum. They're moving on from that idea. So it just goes to show someone can run out to a big lead, but then they have to redesign things constantly, and that can allow others to catch up. And what's interesting is, while Ethereum is way ahead, probably you're not going to catch them anytime soon in terms of regular DeFi. When it comes to institutional DeFi, that race hasn't started yet. So something like the XRP ledger that's built, from day one to be a DeFi and RWA chain, well, it could do some damage there, especially if you don't have to redesign the entire system here. Bloomberg, investors are maturing beyond Bitcoin. I'm like, wow, I'm surprised that we've seen this narrative flip so quick, but in some ways I'm not, because 2026 is really the start of mass adoption where a lot of institutions are going to start using this technology. They said here on Bloomberg, the value is underlying functionality, the utility of the chain. And there are more ways to gain exposure to that than simply holding a singular token, BTC. They didn't say it's bad. They didn't say it's a bad investment, but there's a heck of a lot more out there. What a quick narrative pivot we've seen just to start out 2026. And I think that's going to pick up steam. And they were even saying some of this disruption may be coming from exactly that. Investors realizing, hey, we got to pull some profits out of Bitcoin and get ready to deploy across different, companies or different blockchains. Pretty interesting how quickly that's happening. Lastly, we have Scaramucci here saying institutions and wealthy investors, they're waiting on the Clarity Act here. Anthony Scaramucci says, well, it's 50-50 that it happens this year. I don't like those odds. I wish it a little bit higher. Just his opinion. I've heard it's quite high. It's going to happen. But he said Democrats have privately told him it gets done this year. But again, a lot of people are still on hold, especially when you start getting into other ancillary chains, whether fair or not, whether it's because of this manufactured idea that somehow Bitcoin is better and more, compliant and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people are holding back. They want to know for sure that this is the law of the land permanently and in actual codified form before they jump in here. Because guess what? If it doesn't happen now, for all the people that want the perfect bill, a better bill, different things, if it doesn't happen now, I'm telling you right now, what will happen? Very likely chance 2028, you have someone like Elizabeth Warren, if not her specifically, writing these rules of the road. You got one shot here to get it done. We ain't looking for the perfect. If it doesn't happen now, a crypto adversary likely will, because they ain't going to just sue everyone again. They are going to write the rules of the road, and you won't like those. I guarantee you that will happen. Let me know what you think down below. As always, please like, please subscribe. The revolution will be televised right here on Jungle Link.